The next item of business is consideration of Business Motion 19913 in the name of Graham Day on behalf of the Parliamentary Bureau on changes to business. Any member who wishes to speak to the motion should press their request to speak button now. And I call on Graham Day to move the motion.
Move, Presiding Officer.
Thank you, Minister. No member has asked to speak to the motion. Therefore, the question is that motion 19913 be agreed. Are we all agreed? Yes. The motion is therefore agreed. The next item of business is consideration of Parliamentary Bureau Motion 19914 on committee meeting times. Any member who wishes to speak to the motion should press their request to speak button now. And I call on Graham Day to move the motion.
Move, Presiding Officer.
Thank you, Minister. No member has asked to speak to the motion. Therefore, the question is that motion 19914 be agreed. Are we all agreed? Yes. The motion is therefore agreed. The next item of business is topical questions. At question number 1, I call Rachel Hamilton.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. To ask the Scottish Government whether it will provide an update on the Transform prostate cancer screening trial, including any implications this may have for improving prostate cancer screening in Scotland.
Minister Jenny Minto.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. The Scottish Government desires a screening test that can improve outcomes for men with prostate cancer and for which the benefits clearly outweigh the harms. The Transform trial is a vital step forward in making that a reality. It will test the efficacy of different screening methods, such as rapid MRI and DNA testing, in addition to the standard PSA test. The trial is recruiting participants and is expected to provide first results in around 2 years. Crucially, Prostate Cancer UK designed the trial in collaboration with the UK National Screening Committee, ensuring that its findings will inform the committee's review of prostate screening. In Scotland, as in all nations of the UK, screening policy is underpinned by the UK NSC's recommendations, and we are monitoring the ongoing review carefully.
Rachel Hamilton.
I thank the Minister for that response. In Scotland alone, every year, more than 4,300 men are diagnosed with prostate cancer, and sadly 1,000 men die. These are fathers, brothers, uncles and friends. Presiding Officer, it is the most common cancer in the UK amongst men. In July, I met with a constituent who had just had the all-clear of prostate cancer following months of diagnostic care and treatment. My constituent told me that his cancer was detected purely because Sir Chris Hoy's personal campaign and the support of a very good local GP. Like Sir Chris Hoy and other well-known figures such as David Cameron and Stephen Fry, my constituent told me he wanted to use his experience to raise awareness. So while this screening trial is a positive step, the initial results won't be available for 2 years, meaning that thousands of men in Scotland will continue to go undiagnosed. So can the Minister outline what the Scottish Government is doing to improve awareness of prostate cancer and encourage men at higher risk to get tested?
Minister.
I thank Rachel Hamilton for her supplementary question and recognise absolutely everything she has said. The presence of Sir Chris Hoy to share his story, along with others such as Kenny Logan, has really made prostate cancer much more known within our male population. And adding to that, there was a very good phone-in yesterday morning on Radio Scotland. As I said in my first answer, the Scottish Government will continue to be guided by the advice of the UK National Screening Committee on population-based screening. However, a clinically reviewed refresh of our Scottish referral guidelines for suspected cancer was published in August 2025, and for the first time this now incorporates guidelines for key groups who should consider speaking to their GP about a PSA testing from the age of 45. These are men with a family history of prostate cancer, black men who are around 3 times more likely to develop prostate cancer than white men, and those with a genetic predisposition such as BRCA1 or BRCA2 mutations.
Rachel Hamilton.
I appreciate the Minister's response and welcome the good work that is already being done alongside charities like Prostate Cancer UK and Prostate Scotland. But there is still a long way to go, not only in the early detection, but also in cancer waiting times, of which the SNP's own target of 62 days has not been met for over a decade. Presiding Officer, it's suggested that early detection can help over 80% of men survive prostate cancer in Scotland. And that's why it's so important to improve awareness, encourage those at higher higher risk to get tested. Will the Minister commit to making a statement before Parliament once the Short Life Working Group on Prostate Cancer has published its findings to outline the suggested actions, and can she provide a clear answer on how she aims to meet the 62-day target? Minister.
I thank Rachel Hamilton for her further supplementary, and I recognise too the important work that Prostate Cancer UK has been doing. The Scottish Government invests in early detection work, be the Early Bird campaign, specifically focusing on areas of higher deprivation. With regard to a statement after the working group, I will check with the Minister for Business Affairs, Parliamentary Business, and the Scottish Government continues to invest in cancer and cancer waiting times to reduce them, because I too recognise the importance of early detection and early diagnosis and then treatment.
Alistair Allen.
I note the First Minister and Cabinet Secretary recently met with Sir Chris Hoy and Sarah Hoy to discuss Sir Chris's experience of prostate cancer. As Ms Hamilton mentions, Sir Chris has been a great advocate for men to recognise the signs and symptoms of prostate cancer. So what can the Minister say about the outcome of that meeting and what works are ongoing following it to encourage men to get checked if they recognise symptoms?
Minister.
Thank you. I thank Alistair Allen for raising the importance of that meeting that was held on the 8th of August. The aim of that event was to discuss how to better raise awareness and understanding of prostate cancer. And we were very appreciative of Sir Chris Hoy participating in that. Following this meeting, the Chief Medical Officer will chair an expert short life working group on prostate cancer. This group will meet for the first time next month. It will consider how to reach those at a higher risk of developing prostate cancer and how we can take actions to improve diagnosis and care pathways in Scotland.
Douglas Ross.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. I've increased my own knowledge of prostate cancer and screening for the cancer following my dad's diagnosis, and I had a question about this to the Cabinet Secretary last year. The responses have been positive from the Government, but I'm still hearing too many cases of people asking for a PSA test and not getting it, their GP advising it's not suitable for them. If people have concerns, should the GP not allow this PSA test to take place to either rule in or rule out prostate cancer? Because we know early diagnosis really makes a difference.
Minister.
I thank Douglas Ross for his question and recognise the work that he has been doing to raise awareness too around prostate cancer. Yesterday, I was very aware that there are some areas of health around this prostate cancer where PSA tests are not being offered to men. I think it's important that they maintain that, and if I quote and get the quote slightly wrong, both Kenny Logan and Sir Chris Hoy talked about the importance of ensuring that you write to your GP to request that test, so it's on your records. If I've got that incorrect, then my apologies, and I will correct the record.
Thank you. Question number 2, Claire Hockey.
To ask the Scottish Government what assessment it has made of the warning from Scottish Care that the UK Government's immigration proposals risk destabilising care provision in Scotland.
Minister Tom Arthur.
Presiding Officer, I am deeply worried about these new changes which fail to reflect Scotland's distinct demographic needs and pose a significant risk to our economy, communities and public services. Workforce shortages across the care sector are already exacerbated by a significant decline in the number of health and care visas being granted by the UK Home Office, a 77% drop in the number of health and care visas issued in the year ending June 2025. The UK Government has now gone a step further and closed the social care worker visa route. Now, these are uncomfortable truths for the Labour Party, but Donald McCaskill, Chief Executive of Scottish Care, has said it best this week that the Labour Government's policies will, and I quote, have a profoundly negative impact and will deter much-needed talent from staying in Scotland.
Hockey.
Thank you, President Officer. I'm reassured that the Minister shares my frustration and disappointment in these proposals, particularly following research published last week, which showed that up to 50,000 migrant nursing staff could leave the UK if ministers press ahead with plans to extend the qualifying period to apply for indefinite leave to remain. Can the Minister advise what steps this Scottish Government is taking to support and encourage our international social care staff who make such a valued contribution to the sector to make Scotland their home amid these difficult times?
Minister.
As I stated, Presiding Officer, the Government are deeply concerned with many of the planned reforms of the route to settlement announced by the UK Government. The Scottish Government is taking action to mitigate the devastating impacts of the changes introduced by the UK Government. We have announced a £500,000 package to provide targeted support to displaced social care workers to enable them either to come or to continue to work in Scotland. And through Scotland's Migration Service are providing information, advice and support to employers, investors and individual migrants.
Claire Hockey.
The Minister will be aware that the Labour leader, Anna Sarwar, called these callous proposals, including plans to make people wait up to 20 years to apply for settlement, very brave during an interview he gave on Sunday. Does he agree with me that the language and the rhetoric surrounding immigration policies and proposals is dehumanising? And will he join me in calling on Labour to consider the damaging impact these will have on our health and social care sector?
Minister.
I think Claire Hockey makes some very important and powerful points, because these reforms seem focused entirely on what migrants living in the UK earn, not what they contribute. It is not acceptable that international care workers, for example, now face 15 years of high immigration fees and no recourse to public funds before they will be deemed to have earned settlement. This is despite the significant contribution to our communities they make in providing care for some of our most vulnerable citizens. Indeed, Scottish Care have said that these proposed changes, and I quote, will have a profoundly negative impact on the sustainability and quality of care and support services across Scotland. That is something that should concern all of us in this chamber.
Question number 3, Willie Rennie.
To ask the Scottish Government what its response is to the reported concerns and frustration of the Educational Institute of Scotland about its 4-day working week proposal for teachers.
Cabinet Secretary Jenny Gilruth.
Presiding Officer, last week the Scottish Government published proposals to deliver on reducing teachers' class contact, including a 4-day teaching week, improved maternity pay arrangements and an agreed national minimum learning hour standard for all schools across the country. This will form part of a new national deal for teachers, which is our opportunity to reaffirm the value we place on teaching and to build a system that truly supports the profession. These proposals will be consulted on via the SNCT, and a paper has been shared to that end. I was pleased to meet with the EIS last week in Parliament to discuss them in more detail, and it is imperative that the views of parents and young people are listened to through consultation. I was also very pleased the Government was recently able to settle the teacher pay dispute, meaning that Scotland's teachers remain the best paid on these islands. Scotland's teaching profession will now expect the Government to move forward at pace on delivering a reduction in class contact time. That is what these proposals seek to deliver: improved working conditions for our educators to unlock better outcomes for our pupils.
Willie Rennie.
The Cabinet Secretary said she was very pleased a number of different times, but the teaching unions have reacted with utter fury. They say it's deeply disappointing. They've accused the Government of diktat. The SNCT, which she referred to, have expressed dismay, and the unions are still threatening strike by the end of January. Why does the Cabinet Secretary think her positive announcement has gone down like a cup of cold sick?
Cabinet Secretary.
I don't necessarily think the language that Mr Rennie used there was appropriate, but I did meet with the EIS in Parliament last Thursday, the day I announced the proposals. I listened to the concerns that he's outlined today. I'll not repeat the language he has used, and I will tell you exactly what I told them. That I share teaching unions' frustration that the reduction in teacher class contact time is moving too slowly, that discussions to date have focused too much on the technocratic barriers to delivering the change we all want to see, and too little on what our vision should be for the teaching profession. So our detailed proposals were sent to the EIS and the other teaching unions on Thursday afternoon. I have not heard commentary on the proposals themselves, and I have heard mixed responses from some of the other professional associations who, I note, welcomed them.
Willie Rennie.
My language is nothing compared with what teachers have told me about the reaction to her proposals. Now, I got an answer to a parliamentary question from the Cabinet Secretary, and it says this: I am pleased that earlier this year, the SNCC subgroup on reducing teacher contact time agreed with the Scottish Government proposal to develop a work plan, to develop a route map towards reducing teacher contact time at pace. Isn't it the truth? There is nothing 5 years on that is at pace with this government, and they are moving towards the next election, having failed to deliver this important policy and this promise for teachers.
Cabinet Secretary.
Thank Mr Rennie for his question. I don't recognise what he's just iterated today. I do think it's important that we reflect on the progress that's been made in the past year. I also observe, of course, that the teaching unions in Scotland take a position to negotiate separately on pay and conditions. And, of course, that is entirely a matter in their gift. But it is important we move forward with the improvements to reducing teacher class contact time that we need to deliver on. That's what's going to make a difference at the chalk face. I didn't hear Mr Rennie, unfortunately, comment, for example, on the differences in maternity pay that Scotland's predominantly female teaching population experience at the current time. Teachers in Scotland get 13 weeks full pay, local governments better than teachers, NHS staff get better maternity pay than teachers, civil servants get better maternity pay than teachers. I thought Mr Rennie would have been welcoming that for his constituents.
Stephen Kerr.
The problem is that the Cabinet Secretary has complete disrespect for this Parliament. She may lift her eyes to the ceiling as if this is something that I shouldn't bring to her attention. This is a press statement that we're talking about. Where is the detail? Was there something distributed to the convener of the Education Committee of this Parliament? Don't think so. Was there anything shared with the committee members? Nothing at all. This just smacks of a gimmick because of a manifesto commitment, a number of them in education, that this Cabinet Secretary is failing to deliver. So my question to the Cabinet Secretary is very simple. She's already admitted that the ideas she floated have raised major implications for parents, for councils, for pupils, and, of course, teachers have been mentioned already by Willie Rennie. So when exactly will she respect this Parliament sufficiently to publish detailed proposals? When will we have sight of the rationale? Where will we see the evidence for this set of ideas? And when exactly will she come to this Parliament, make a statement or have a debate so that we can properly scrutinise her actions?
Cabinet Secretary.
Thank Mr Kerr for his question. She is not the cat's mother, and she is also not looking to the ceiling. I'm looking directly at Mr Kerr at the current time whilst I address him in the chamber, showing respect to this institution. Well, I hear the member commenting from his sedentary position. I often hear him comment about behaviour in schools. I think he could set a better standard for our young people than what we are experiencing today. In terms of the detailed response of the government, it's actually not a matter for the Education Committee. It's not a matter for the Parliament. It's a matter for the SNCT to negotiate on. That's why these are draft proposals. A paper has been put to the SNCT, a detailed paper. I see Mr Kerr looking as though he wants to be a member of that negotiating committee. I'm sorry to hear that he is not at the current time, but that committee does need to negotiate these things. That tripartite agreement is hugely important, and I would have thought Mr Kerr would have welcomed the idea, for example, that we might look at a national approach to learning standards across the country in terms of learning hours. We see variance all over the country. I would have thought, as a Democrat, that Mr Kerr, who respects this institution so much, would have welcomed that move to democratising the approach to the hours that are being taught in our schools to ensure fairness across our curriculum system and for all of our children and young people.
Paul McLennan.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. I welcome the Cabinet Secretary's proposals. Now, ensuring the well-being of the teaching workforce is, of course, key to improving educational outcomes for children. Tackling workload, quite rightly, is one key aspect. Remuneration is another. Can the Cabinet Secretary update us on the outcome on this year's pay negotiations for teachers?
Cabinet Secretary.
I'm delighted that teachers have accepted a new pay deal which ensures that Scotland's classroom teachers on the main grade scale continue to be the best paid in the UK. This agreement shows what can be achieved through constructive dialogue. The deal means that the starting salary for a qualified teacher in Scotland will increase to over £41,900, with further increases coming in April and August. Furthermore, the top of the main grade scale for classroom teachers will have increased from £37,575 in April 2018 to over £52,600 by August of this year, an increase of 40%.
Pam Duncan-Glancy.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. Teachers have been waiting for action on workloads since this government made them promises 4.5 years ago, yet we still have no movement until a rushed announcement in a desperate attempt to act at pace. An announcement that the trade unions have said appears to undermine the established SNCT negotiating machinery and that has caused dismay by the teachers panel, who say the Cabinet Secretary has circumvented well-established collective bargaining structures of the SNCT. So can I ask the Cabinet Secretary, what does she intend to do about this? Or is collective bargaining going to be the latest casualty of this government's incompetence?
Cabinet Secretary.
I'm surprised Ms Duncan-Glancy didn't listen to the answer I gave to Mr Kerr, whereby I set out that on the day this announcement was made, a paper was shared with the SNCT. And of course, it is a matter for the SNCT to consult upon on that tripartite arrangement and basis. There's not been any changes in relation to how that will be agreed to. I do think it's important, though, that the government commits publicly to its vision for how we might reduce teacher-class contact. And I do want the teaching profession to hear the ways in which that might be delivered. That include a 4-day teaching week, which would help to reduce teacher workload. I know that's a matter Ms Duncan-Glancy takes really seriously, so I hope that she will engage in some of these proposals as well and share any thoughts she might have to that end on how we can lighten the load on our teachers and let them get on with teaching our children and young people.
Briefly, Miles Briggs.
Presiding Officer, the Cabinet Secretary says it's important that the Government commits publicly. They committed publicly 4.5 years ago in their manifesto. They just haven't delivered on that promise. Now, myself, Pam Duncan-Glancy, Willie Rennie and Ross Greer attended the AHDS conference in Glasgow last Friday, and I have to say teachers are cynical about what this Government can or will deliver. So can I ask the Cabinet Secretary, the pilot project she announced, when will that actually report, and will it be before the election?
Cabinet Secretary.
On the final point to Mr Briggs' question, it would be my expectation. I was also at the same conference and I discussed the matter with all the attendees, I think probably before Mr Briggs arrived on Thursday. He talked about how that might be delivered. I just want to remind the member that in last year's budget we put in an extra funding uplift for teacher numbers to recognise inflationary increases to teacher pay, but that would allow councils to go back to 2023 levels. From our own modelling that published last year, we think there's enough primary teachers essentially in the system at the current time to deliver on reduced class contact predicated on the 2023 numbers. So the funding in the budget last year allows local authorities to move forward at pace with those pilots, and I look forward to working with them through the SNCT to getting that up and running in advance of the election.
Thank you. That concludes topical questions. The next item of business is a debate on motion 19866 in the name of Jenny Gilruth on the children, withdrawal from religious education and amendment of UNCRC Compatibility Scotland Bill at Stage 1. And I'd be grateful if members who wish to take part in the debate were to press their request to speak buttons now.